I thought it was on. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our West Perth council meeting for August the 16th. This is going to be possibly a bit of a challenge. We're in a newer facility or a different facility than what we have been doing. It's a hybrid meeting. There's, I believe, 8 of us here in the room, 8 council members, and then we also have 3 on Zoom. So we'll just have to bear with us. Before we call the meeting to order, I'll ask that we maybe have a moment of reflection, and we can maybe keep in mind, have a little word for the technical people here tonight, because I think they maybe need all the help they can get. So we'll have a moment of reflection. Okay. All right, we'll call this meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is the confirmation of the agenda. And so I'm going to be turning my head a lot here tonight. I'll check with people in the room and people on the screen. So the first item then is a motion to confirm the agenda. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Rose and Councillor Murray. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Does anybody have a conflict of interest with anything on the agenda? Okay, don't see anybody, but if you do run into problems as we go along, you can declare it at that time. There are 12 items on the consent agenda. Is there anything there that anybody would like pulled and dealt with separately, or maybe a further explanation of what it is, or just a clarification? Councillor Trinkowski?
Your worship, item 4.5, City of Stratford resolution regarding phase out Ontario's gas plants.
Whoops, it keeps going on. Do you wish to maybe talk about that right now, Dean, what you want or what the question is?
Certainly. Well, I guess it's a comment for discussion. The city has written a letter to the provincial government requesting I want to get the words right here, to immediately take steps. At their June 28, 2021 regular council meeting, City of Stratford City Council adopted a resolution petitioning the provincial government to immediately take steps to replace gas-powered electrical generation with non-carbon based sustainable alternatives. The concern there is that natural gas provides a stable base load generation for the power grid in Ontario. So the concern with that request is that without the gas plants in the electrical grid, it increases the likelihood of system blackouts or brownouts, which would be counterproductive to the economic performance of the province. There are other ways to achieve the goals that they're looking for in their letter, but I'm afraid that would be more of a hindrance than a help.
Okay, so just for clarification here, Dean, we can pull that and have a separate discussion with regards to that motion. The feeling that I'm getting is that you would like to have it separate and possibly maybe not support it. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Well, I just wanted to pull it, separate it, and just have some discussion on it.
Okay.
At this time anyway.
Yep. Okay, we'll do that then. So we will, if there's no further questions or anything, we will have a motion that we accept the consent agenda items 4.1 to 4.12 with the exception of 4.5, and we're going to deal with that one separately. So do we have a move and seconder for that? Councillor Marshall and Councillor Harold. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, that is carried. Now, item 4.5, what's the wishes of council? Do you want to have that discussion now, or we leave it to the end and deal with it under other business? Sure call. Deal with it now?
It's whatever my peers wish. I'm fine with that.
Let's deal with it now then. Okay, I'll turn the floor over to you, Dean, and you can start on that and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Well, earlier I mentioned that the city of Stratford adopted the resolution to immediately take steps to remove the gas-powered electrical generation plants in the power grid. And I understand the reasoning and the rationale behind it. My concern is that if you take a reliable component out of the electrical generation system and you don't have a reliable alternative in its place, then it's going to create problems like they had these kinds of problems in California with blackouts and brownouts, and Texas when they had the severe winter weather earlier this year. And Ontario would be in no different situation than any of those two states. So I just find it ironic that later on in our council meeting, we will be having a presentation from a natural gas company, and we're trying to, we had an unsuccessful application to install new natural gas service to the north end of West Perth, and reducing when you take away natural gas power plant generation in one area, that will increase the potential costs of trying to service customers in West Perth with new natural gas service. So there's a connection that I'm trying to illustrate here for everyone.
Thanks, Dean. Any other comments with regards to the previous comments that we've had? Okay, I don't see anybody raising their hand at this time. So I'm looking to Dean and I'm looking to staff here, the way we can deal with it. We can actually do nothing. And that might be the simplest thing, unless you want to do a motion to not support. But probably the easiest way would be we just don't take any action. We pull it out of the consent agenda and just leave it. Pull it out.
If I may, Your Worship, I would suggest that if council's willing, they still accept the letter that they've received it as information.
Just for information.
Yeah, and I think making that clear should be safe.
Yep. Okay. No, is that okay, Dean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. So then item 4.5 of the consent agenda, motion would be that we receive for information. Do we have a mover and seconder for that motion? Councillor Tam and Councillor Rose. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on. We do have a delegation, and I am unable to see who is on the Zoom. Well, I know who's supposed to be on the Zoom.
We're just bringing them in.
I just don't know who is on the Zoom.
You can probably start doing introductions.
Oh, here we come. Okay.
Yeah, we have two of them here. So you can do the introduction of who your delegation is, Mayor McKenzie, and we'll go from there.
Okay, the delegation tonight from Enbridge, we have with us Brian Leaney and Daryl Arnold, and Daryl is the manager of operations, and Brian is the senior advisor, municipal and stakeholder engagement. And welcome to our West Perth meeting. As I said earlier, hopefully we don't have too many glitches here and we can proceed, but I will turn the floor over to you and you can make the presentation. I believe you have a PowerPoint to share. So we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just attempting to share my screen now. Please let me know if everyone can see that.
We can see it.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you, Your Worship, and members of Council for the opportunity to present this evening. My name is Brian Lenny. I'm a Senior Advisor for Municipal Affairs for Enbridge Gas. Joining me from Enbridge is Daryl Arnold, Manager of Operations. We're here today to provide an update on Enbridge Gas and talk about our efforts to expand natural gas service in the municipality, and also talk about our efforts to expand opportunities for low carbon solutions, both within the municipality and outside the municipality. I wanted to start, if I could, by giving an overview of our current lay of the land in West Perth. So we currently serve just over 2,200 customers. The vast majority of those are residential, about 212 commercial and 13 industrial, and about 110 kilometers worth of pipe. And we've been serving the municipality for well over 50 years. I'll turn it over to Daryl now for a discussion about what occurred with the natural gas program phase 2 and our plans proceeding from that.
Yes, thanks, Brian. And again, thanks, Your Worship and members of Council this evening for having us here. So on the tails of the success of the first phase of the natural gas expansion program, the provincial government last year in 2020 initiated phase 2. And not surprisingly, the program saw a lot of interest, with over 200 proposed projects being submitted across the province that represented over $2 billion in total cost of investment in new natural gas infrastructure across the province. So as part of that process, Enbridge Gas applied to the Ontario Energy Board and the provincial government under the second phase of the natural gas expansion program for a project to service Moncton and the surrounding area. Now, the natural gas expansion program does have a limited budget, and earlier this year, in June, the provincial government announced their decisions on which projects would proceed under phase 2 of the program. And unfortunately, the Moncton project, the project to service Moncton and the surrounding area, was not successful in its application. And so with this, that brings up the question is kind of what are the next options to service this area? And we do, if you could advance the next slide, Brian. There is a couple, there's at least another good option, which is an expansion surcharge program that Enbridge Gas is introducing. Under this program, Enbridge Gas offers applicable customers the ability to contribute a portion of their savings from converting to natural gas towards natural gas expansion feasibility in situations where the cost to attach to the Enbridge Gas system is not economically feasible under the regular rates of the Ontario Energy Board. And what this is a surcharge of 23 cents for each cubic meter of natural gas used. And then this is applied, it's above and beyond the additional regular rates. And that's really how we make up that difference in project when it's not feasible under the normal Ontario Energy Board financial mechanism. So this expansion surcharge would be applied for a number of years, up to a maximum of 40 years. So it'll be a calculation. It'll be based on what's required to service that area, pipe length, pipe size, if there's a natural gas pressure regulating station, etc. There's a number of factors that go into this, but so it'd be up to a maximum of 40 years, potentially less, and it would also the number of customers that sign up to that project. This project, it's applicable to many different types of project sizes of a number of different customers. And we anticipate after the inclusion of the expansion surcharge, customers could still save up to 39% on heating their homes and hot water bills when we compare to propane, electricity, and heating oil. These programs are for existing customers. So What I mean through that is new subdivisions and new condominiums, things of that nature that we already treat under, how we operate under Ontario Energy Board and how we currently expand our system are excluded from this. So this is to service new or to service existing customers. And so right now we do have a group, a newly formed department within Enbridge that's looking at a number of projects like Moncton that would not have been successful in the natural gas expansion program, and looking under this expansion surcharge program to see how they fit under that program and what that project would look like. Probably won't look the same as the project that was submitted under the natural gas expansion project, but it would be kind of the same flavor. So right now we have a team looking for those things, and I think hopefully we'd be able to come back at some point and talk about what that project could look like. So with that, Brian, on to the next slide here. So the growth that we're seeing in West Perth, over the last 5 years, we've added 164 customers to our natural gas system in the municipality, and that includes 21 customers in the commercial category, which is good to see, and 2 in the grain dryer generator category. So, we continue to meet and want to meet the needs of the municipality for regular growth. So, for example, new homes on the Duncan Street and Argent Crescent area, and new homes around Pond Street, Henry Street, and Thames Avenue, and on Clayton Street. So I think the message here is that new organic, new subdivision development, we will continue to meet that growth. I don't think there's any concerns there. It's the discussion about reaching out to those existing homes and how we can put that different style project under our surcharge program. If there's a project there, we can develop to help to get in and service those customers.
Thanks, Paul. I'll turn it back to myself here just to talk about another important matter that we wanted to discuss tonight, which is the recent announcements that our Enbridge Inc., our parent company, made regarding net zero emissions. So also in November of 2020, Enbridge Inc., our parent company, announced a net zero target by 2050 in our operations, and a 35% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions intensity from our operations by 2030. That also links compensation for our executives to progress on those goals. So I guess the question really, to answer tonight for council is, what does that mean for Enbridge Gas? And the answer is a pretty aggressive plan to decarbonize the gas system and also offer low carbon solutions to customers that you might not expect from a company with a name called Enbridge Gas, but certainly here to discuss that tonight. And within that, there's also opportunities for customers and potential customers within the municipality that I'll be discussing. So when we talk about a low carbon future, at Enbridge Gas, the best way to describe it, and I did not coin this term, this came from our business development group, is 4 pillars. So green gas, less gas, more gas, and no gas. So the first pillar, the pillar more gas that we talked about earlier, is the expansion of the natural gas system into areas that currently have other fuels. So propane, for example, emits carbon at a higher rate than natural gas. So does heating oil. So the goal with more gas is to expand the natural gas system into areas to displace those higher emitting fuels. The second piece of more gas is to displace diesel with compressed natural gas in transportation settings. So we all are fully aware that electrification of vehicles, particularly smaller vehicles, is a real thing that is occurring, and we're not talking about displacing that. What we're talking about is for vehicles and heavy duty vehicles, so large buses, backhoes, dump trucks, things where electrification is very far in the offing. Our goal at Enbridge is to get those vehicles, whether they be municipality or private industry, onto compressed natural gas. Switching a vehicle of that sort from diesel to compressed natural gas results in an immediate reduction of carbon emissions of 25%, and an immediate reduction in tailpipe emissions of 95%. So that's the more gas pillar. When we talk about the less gas pillar, really that is our conservation programs, which have been running since 1995. So these are programs that are available for our customers in West Perth. They've been around for many years. One example I'll point to is our home efficiency rebate program, which offers Enbridge Gas customers who own their own home up to $5,000 in incentives for replacing windows with more high efficiency windows, replacing furnace with a higher efficiency furnace, and several other measures, air sealing, insulation, etc. Excuse me, that's just one of many conservation programs we offer. So that would be the less gas pillar. The green gas pillar is the one that is of interest for potential business development opportunities for residents and industries in West Perth. So when we talk about green gas, there's two pillars. There's hydrogen, which is certainly a growth area for us in a pilot form in a lot of areas across the province where we're using the power grid to create hydrogen, which is then injected into the natural gas grid to displace conventional natural gas. So the molecule, for lack of a better term, that comes to your door will actually have a component of hydrogen in it in some areas of the province now, and on a pilot basis as we test that out. But the real one I want to talk about tonight is renewable natural gas. So, excuse me, this would be gas that we source from organic waste, from wastewater treatment plants, from landfills, and also from farms. So from dairy farms, from hog farmers, from anyone, any farmer that essentially has some type of anaerobic digestion or manure operation where there's a potential for that, and where Enbridge gas piping is not necessarily far away from where they currently exist. We're certainly interested in having those conversations with those farmers. We have actually many of those ongoing across the province. Daryl's brought up one recently that is just north of London that is, I think, in service now. But certainly there's opportunities there as we really look to ramp up the sourcing of renewable natural gas from farming operations and from other sources like water, wastewater, in landfill and organics. So we're certainly out there. Our renewable natural gas team is in reaching out, and certainly open if you are aware of any opportunities out there. Certainly our renewable natural gas team is interested in talking further with them. And then the final pillar was no gas. So you might be surprised by that, obviously, with an Enbridge Gas, a company saying no gas. So what we mean there is actually Enbridge is now in the business of geothermal, which is a zero emission, taking heat and cooling from the ground. And we're in the business of installing geothermal systems and then maintaining them and charging a monthly rental fee. Not dissimilar almost from like a water heater. In our past, we used to do that, no longer do that. But geothermal is a business area certainly we're expanding into. And another area we're expanding into as well is solar. So that certainly more to come on that. But solar is a pillar of Enbridge Inc. in terms of our large solar farms and opportunities there. So certainly looking in that way. So that's really kind of how we see the future going. I think the natural gas that comes to your door now in about 10 to 20 years will look a lot different in terms of where it comes from. And it may be sourced from not far away from you, from a farm or from a landfill. And or it also may have some hydrogen in it as well, which is a low emission source. So with that, we wanted to thank you all for taking the time to listen to what we had to say here. And I know there's probably some questions out there about expansion plans with Moncton and other areas. So certainly happy to take those questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Questions from members of council? I guess I have one question when we were talking about the possible expansion to Moncton and the surcharge, I guess, for lack of a better word. So who actually makes the decision whether it proceeds or not? Do you do a poll of all the residents in the area as to whether they want to be paying a surcharge for that, or how do you decide whether it's going to go ahead?
I can answer that, Daryl, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, you hit it right there, Mayor. So what would happen is, and what's occurring now kind of is like the desktop exercise, right? So we know we have approval from the government as of last November for those projects that, you know, weren't selected under the natural gas expansion program to examine things, economic run at things, figure out how projects would make sense from an economic perspective without a provincial subsidy, as some of the projects that were selected got. From there, if the project was termed to be viable from an economic basis, then yes, what would have to happen is outreach in like a direct outreach, in some cases probably door-to-door outreach or mailers to prospective customers to poll interest. And really that would determine, you know, we could present a project and know it's viable from an economic perspective, but if the customer interest isn't there, then it wouldn't proceed, right? So yes, you're exactly right that after we do our internal analysis, the next step would be, you know, that direct mailing and outreach door to door to prospective customers to poll interest.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Trinkowski, question.
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, I was particularly interested, I guess, in more of the details of the outreach methodology. How does the company find the customers, and conversely, how does the customer find the company so that they can discuss a potential network?
Through Your Worship. So the way this would work essentially is our market research team, which, you know, keeps databases and certainly, you know, does desktop exercises, would know, you know, a geographic area to target for outreach. So I'm not exactly from previous outreach for projects like this, perhaps in the Milverton area in the past, or Wartburg and Rostock. I believe what occurred was, you know, a mailer to start, and then a follow up with either with like a direct door to door outreach. So, you know, they would just define the geographic area where the project could proceed, and then proceed with direct outreach. And really, the outreach goes further than that. So it would start with probably a mailer, it would go to door, and then further from that, it would probably even go to something like Enbridge setting up at a community festival or fair or at an arena, and, you know, with a map and saying, you know, natural gas potential for this specific area. If you live in this area, you know, please stop by and talk to us. So we would really aggressively try to get a hold of as many people as we could. Door to door is one of the main ways, though, for sure.
Yeah, what I would add is locally we do have a construction team that does have dedicated employees that have constant outreach with customers that are looking to get connected to our gas system, and they would have worked with some of these, you know, farmers, for example, that have grain dryers, and they know, you know, which customers want gas, and they certainly have regular contacts. We do have a good starting point of what that would look like, in addition to, you know, the project that was initially proposed. So I think we have a good base of knowledge where to start proposing that project to bring forward.
Councillor Tan.
I just wondered, how many cubic meters approximately per year would a household, an average household and an average grain dryer setup use?
That's a good question. Do you have some statistics off the top of your head, Brian? The grain dryer is a little bit harder.
23 cents.
Yeah, I'd have to see from, so I do have those stats for a family of 4. I'd have to actually look at my charts. I don't have them off the top of my head, though, unfortunately.
I think that's something maybe we can take away to bring back to council. I'd be remiss to, you know, provide a best guess that could be completely inaccurate.
No, and that's fine. You can forward that to us, you know, at a later time when you got a moment. That'll be fine. Anybody else? Any questions? Councillor Trinkowski again.
Through you, Your Worship, not so much a question, but a comment. I extend my appreciation to Enbridge for making the presentation tonight. When we developed our most recent municipal strategic plan, part of that discussion, we talked about tools for future success for the community. And I believe that extending the natural gas coverage into the future is one of those important tools, whether it's for agricultural use or industrial or commercial or residential. So I would look forward to the follow-up from Enbridge to this presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dean. Just one question before we leave. Do you, and this is looking in your crystal ball, but do you anticipate another rollout or another phase from the province that there might be some more funding in the future?
Your Worship, so that is an excellent question, and we certainly pose that as well. And the answer is honestly, we don't know. So our focus really is on the program that we received approval from the OEB from as a next step. So the program we talked about tonight, I really honestly do not have any signal one way or another whether a phase 3 is in the offing. So our focus really is on those projects that didn't get picked, trying to find another way to make them work. And we're hopeful certainly for Moncton and several other places across the province, but we'll take some due diligence on our side.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any further questions before we wrap up here? Okay, I don't see any, so I do want to thank you two gentlemen for participating here this evening. I think initially the query was with regards to the application that we had and why we weren't successful, and I think the answer is probably it isn't necessarily anything that we did or didn't do. It's just a case of the province this went eeny, meeny, miny, moe, picked out what they thought would be good projects. So we just kind of hang in there and you know, we'll see what the future brings. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good. Take care. Okay, moving on. We do have a public meeting, so I find my right stuff here. We need a motion that we close this part of or adjourn this part of the council meeting. And we will enter into a public meeting with regards to some planning matters. So a motion that we adjourn adjourn, right, Dan? Yep, that we adjourn this meeting. Councillor Rose and Councillor Murray, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. And so I am looking up at the screen here and I see Dave Gundrum. And on my sheet, it says I'm supposed to introduce Susanna Reid. But I will not introduce Susanna Reid. I will just welcome David, a very friendly face. So we're calling this public meeting to order at 7:51, and the public meeting is being held in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest by any member of council? Okay, seeing none, I will at this time ask our clerk for the purpose of the public meeting. Dan?
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this public meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Perth is to review the applications for a proposed amendment to Bylaw 100-1998, the zoning bylaw of the Municipality of West Perth, and to allow interested members of the public the opportunity to ask questions or offer comments with regard to the applications. Council will not make a decision on the applications at this public meeting. Based on the recommendations and information received at this public meeting, amending zoning bylaws will be presented for approval at a regular council meeting later this evening. If any member of the public would like to be notified in writing of the decision on the applications, they are to provide their name and mailing address and email to me, the clerk, this evening via email at clerk@westperth.com. A person or public body may appeal a decision if they have made an oral submission at this public meeting or a written submission to council prior to the passing of the bylaws. Notice was given by mail to all landowners within 120 meters of the lands affected by the bylaws and those agencies as prescribed by regulation. A sign advertising tonight's meeting was posted on the properties on July 27th, 2021. Correspondence received following the posting of the notice will be presented by the planner, David Gundrum.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So as was mentioned, this is a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment. The application was initiated by Barbara D Farms Limited, care of Jeff Layton, on behalf of Elwood Ross Engel, and affects property described as part of Lot 8, Concession 16, Logan Ward in the municipality of West Perth. 911 identification is 5703 Perth line 55. I will now call upon David Gundrum, planner for the municipality of West Perth, to review the application. David?
Okay, thank you, Mayor McKenzie. Good evening, Mayor, members of West Perth Council. I'm just going to share a screen here momentarily just to help illustrate what this zoning bylaw amendment concerns as I go about. So as Mayor McKenzie mentioned, this application is for a zoning amendment in the Logan Ward of the municipality of West Perth. This application relates to a condition of consent for surplus farm severance, more specifically consent file B1821 that was approved on July 22nd of 2021 by the County of Perth Land Division Committee through delegated authority. Condition 9 of consent B1821 required that a zoning bylaw amendment be adopted by the municipality of West Perth to zone the severed lot shown in yellow here containing the surplus farm dwelling to limit the uses on the severed lot containing that dwelling to non-farm residential uses and accessory uses thereto, and subsequently to rezone the red retained portion shown in the image before you to limit the uses to agriculture and to prohibit the establishment of any future residential use on the retained farmlands. This application for zoning bylaw amendment is a requirement of the County of Perth official plan policy that concerns permits severance of dwellings deemed surplus as a result of farm consolidation. The proposed ZBA, as mentioned, is a requirement of the associated consent file and would also satisfy requirements of the provincial policy statement as well as the County of Perth official plan. While section 5631 of the County of Perth official plan was recently amended through County Council adoption of official plan amendment number 189 on July 8th, 2021, which altered the criteria against which surplus farm severances are evaluated against. I just will note for Council's information that the related consent to this file was considered prior to the lapsing of the coming into force and effect of this amendment, which amended the County of Perth official plan policy for surplus farm severances. So essentially the application will rezone the severed lot, placing it in a site-specific A-1 zone, while also rezoning the retained farm lot, placing it in a predetermined A-3 zone to satisfy the policies of the County of Perth official plan, as well as the provincial policy statement. There was a notice of public meeting provided on July 27th, 2021. And as of the date of our reporting today, we have received one piece of correspondence from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, which stated that they have no objections to the application for zoning bylaw amendment. I will also note for Council's information that the barn that's shown on the 2015 aerial image here is actually was previously removed on the property prior to consideration of the severance. It does not show up on the severance sketch shown here, as well as our site photos that were taken on June 22nd, 2021. It would otherwise have been generally in this area to the rear of the house. So I will stop sharing screen at this moment. Again, we are recommending that Council adopt this zoning bylaw amendment. Staff is of the opinion that the ZBA is consistent with the 2020 PPS, conforms with the County of Perth official plan, and represents good planning. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to the Chair and Council for any questions regarding this application.
Okay, thank you, David. I'm going to have to ask staff because I'm unable to see names who's here and not. But I'm not sure if there's anybody that is on or wishes to be on that wishes to speak in support of this application. Don't see anybody. And the same if there's anybody opposed to this application. I'm not aware of anybody, but I don't see anything happening on the screen. Okay. Does the applicant or agent wish to speak at this time? Okay, I don't believe so. Any general comments or questions from council? Okay, I don't see any. So I would like to thank those in attendance for their comments this evening. Should council proceed with the adoption of the zoning bylaw amendment, notice of passing will be provided as prescribed by the Planning Act and a 20-day appeal period to the local planning appeal tribunal. Thank you very much. Now, I do believe that Susanna is in the wings or is on there. There she is. Okay, good, good. So it's my pleasure to introduce Susanna Reid. And I can go back a number of years ago when Susanna, also in a different profession, was making a presentation to West Perth Council. And I'm not going to talk about about what that presentation was about. But anyways, Susanna comes to us as a very high qualified planner. She was working previously in Huron County and was well respected there. So I think we're very fortunate to have her. And not that David isn't, we're going to miss David, but we're doing a bit of a swap here. And so we're going to have Susanna looking after the West Perth planning matters. So Susanna, this is where Jeff Brick says I throw you under the bus. So I'm going to ask if you would like to say a few words at this time and maybe just a brief outline, kind of familiarize yourself with the rest of council.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Mayor McKenzie. And it's a pleasure to be here. As the mayor has mentioned, I was a planner in Huron County for a number of years, and I moved to Stratford, actually. Worked at the Social Research and Planning Council at the United Way for a couple of years. And then I was very pleased to join the planning department under Sally McMullen's leadership. Some of the council might be familiar that my family is actually from Fullerton Township. So it seemed like a happy coincidence to be reassigned to West Perth, and I'm very pleased to join the team at the municipality.
Okay, thank you, Susanna. And some of the members of council would probably say that we won't hold anything against you when you mention about Fullerton Township, but West Perth is the main thing. Okay, we're going to proceed with the second application at this time. So this is a public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment. The application was initiated by Timothy and Susan Beard, Michael and Catherine Southam, and affects property described as part of Park Lot 2, Plan 339, Mitchell Ward, Municipality of West Perth. I will now call upon David Gundrum, planner for the Municipality of West Perth, to review the application. David?
Thank you, Mayor McKenzie. Mayor, members of council, I'll share screen, flip over to our report photo for this proposed zoning bylaw amendment. So the owners in this case of the subject property shown here, which is on the western shore of the Thames River as it flows through Mitchell, and just west of the exit off the Henry Street Bridge, if you were traversing west. It doesn't show in the current photo, given the date that this was captured in 2015, but the Henry Street Bridge does, as everyone knows, connects generally where my cursor shows. What the owners have applied for is a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment that would permit establishment of a frame storage shed within the future development zone, the FD zone, which is captured within the turquoise boundary shown here. There also is a floodplain zone that applies to the property just outside to the east of this edge shown here where my cursor is, as it concerns the Thames River floodplain. So the FD zone essentially doesn't permit for the establishment of any buildings or structures. It doesn't permit any land uses except those which might predate the establishment of the zone or that are pre-existing. The site is currently vacant of any buildings or structures. It does contain some brush and trees on the site. But what the owners are asking for is permission that an amendment be adopted so that they can erect a storage shed, essentially, that would have an area of approximately 240 square feet, with measuring approximately 12 feet by 20 feet in area. And the purpose for asking for establishment of the structure is essentially for care and maintenance on the grounds of the property. That's essentially it. I'll just flip to a later image shown here. This is a copy of the reference plan for the property that shows the approximate location and area shown in red here, this little box of where the shed would be located. The owners are proposing that the shed be located 75 meters back of the front lot line and 12 meters east of the western lot line of the property. In terms of our review, the ZBA would allow for a form of development within a designated settlement area that would more efficiently use the existing lands shown here on the image before you. And this type of land use would be consistent with what you might find on residential lots in the immediate area. And it's not anticipated that should this ZBA be adopted, that the permitted use would cause any land use conflicts with any surrounding development. If in fact it would enhance the care and upkeep for the owners of the property moving into the future, the ability to store groundskeeping equipment and implements to help care and maintain the property over time. We have found that the proposed ZBA would conforms to the applicable policies of the County of Perth official plan, and by extension, those policies of the Mitchell Ward official plan. The property is designated as residential in the Mitchell Ward OP, and the new land use permissions would be consistent, as I mentioned previously, with the use that would be commonly found in this designation. As the FD zone doesn't have an extensive list of permitted uses, nor a list of yard setbacks, given the limited uses that are permitted. Staff have created a comprehensive proposed zoning bylaw amendment that would control and regulate both the location, the maximum gross floor area, and permitted use itself on the property, subject to the request of the applicants through their applications. So those details of the site-specific amendment, there's 6 of them that are noted in our report, and I'm sure council, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. But we have regulated it according to what the applicants have asked for. The shed would also be located outside of the existing floodplain limit, but given that the property is affected by a regulated area from the through the Conservation Authority, the Conservation Authority did respond to our notice of public meeting that was issued on July 27th. They stated that given that the structure is proposed to be located outside of the regulated area that applies to the property, that the Conservation Authority has no objections to the application, nor do they have any permitting requirements that would trigger as a result of the proposed development. So to conclude, staff have found the proposed zoning amendment to be consistent with the 2020 PPS, that it conforms to the County of Perth official plan, and by extension, the Mitchell Ward official plan, and that the proposed development of the lands through the amendment represent good planning. I will also just flip quickly to show a few photos of the site that were taken a couple of 6 days ago on August 10th, just to illustrate current site conditions on the property. And of course, the comments from the Upper Thames shown here that were form part of the agenda. So I will stop sharing screen at this point and turn it back to the chair. I'll be happy to answer any questions that members of council may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Thanks very much. So I'm not sure Tim is on there, Okay, so is there anybody wishing to speak in support of the application other than the agent or applicant? Do we have anybody wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Not aware of anybody. Does the applicant wish to say anything at this time? No, I don't see anything happening there. So I take it that Tim is happy with what's going on. Any general comments or questions from council? Councillor Tam?
Just for, through the chair, for clarification, David, I recall when we put the bridge in, that got serviced as a future building lot. Is that correct? I just wondered if at such time, if that ever became a building lot, if it's all one parcel, or how that would unfold if there was ever desire to put a residence there. I thought we serviced that.
Through the chair, Councillor Tam, a very good question. There are full municipal services that run by the frontage of that lot. So that lot conceivably could link into existing municipal services at a future point in time. Of course, any type of, like, let's say residential development on the lot, which would probably be the more logical type of development you might want to see, if any, in the future on that lot beyond what's being suggested today, would of course certainly be quite constrained by the current floodplain limit. And there would be some challenges, potential engineering challenges associated with development of the lot. Not to say that there isn't some room for potential residents in future, but quick answer, yes, there are adequate services in that area that could potentially accommodate a higher form of development on that property.
Thank you.
Other questions from members of council? Okay, seeing none, I would like to thank those in attendance for their comments. Should council proceed with the adoption of the zoning bylaw amendment, notice of passing will be provided as prescribed by the Planning Act and a 20-day appeal period to the local planning appeal tribunal. So that concludes that application. We have one more to go, a third application. And this is a public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment. The application was initiated by Luann Hunt on behalf of Jeremy Stouskoff and affects property described as Lot 6 concession for Fullerton Ward, Municipality of West Perth, 911 address 3632 Road 145. I will now call upon David Gundrum, planner for the Municipality of West Perth, to review the application. David?
Thank you, Mayor McKenzie. Mayor, members of council, once again, I'll just flip to share screen here to our report photo to help illustrate the subject property and what's being proposed. So this application for zoning amendment affects lands in the Fullerton Ward, as the mayor alluded to, 3632 Road 145. The subject property in this case is subject to a conditional approval for a consent application, being consent to sever application BO 921, which was approved through delegated authority on June 28th of 2021 by the County of Perth Land Division Committee. Application BO 921 approved the conditional severance of a existing farm dwelling as a surplus farm dwelling shown here on the property. As per condition number 8 of the conditionally approved consent and the County of Perth official plan policy that governs the severance of farm dwellings deemed surplus as a result of farm consolidation, the policy required that a zoning amendment be passed to regulate the uses on both the severed and retained lots shown here. So this said BA, similar to the one previously presented earlier this evening, would rezone the area shown in yellow containing the surplus farm dwelling, rezoning it into the A-1 zone to permit only non-farm residential uses and accessory uses thereto, and at the same time rezoning the retained land shown in red on the image before you, placing it in the A-3 zone to prohibit the establishment of a residential use in future on those lands and to preserve those lands for agricultural use. In our review, we have found that the application conforms, would help would conform to the County of Perth official plan policy that concerns severance of surplus farm dwellings. Staff are in support of the application and are recommending approval to West Perth Council. In response to our circulation provided on July 27th, we are in receipt of one piece of correspondence from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority received on August 10th, which the Upper Thames stated they have no objection to the application for a zoning bylaw amendment. And just to illustrate current conditions on recent current conditions on the site, our report photos that were here taken in April 26 as they related to the original severance application and have been reused here for the purpose of the zoning amendment. So I will stop sharing screen at this point, turn it back over to Mayor and Council for any questions on this application. Again, staff are recommending that Council approve this application for a zoning bylaw amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Now, I am assuming that there is nobody on that wishes to speak in support or in opposition. And I am also not sure if the applicant wishes to speak, so I'm getting nods that no, they're not. So any questions or general comments from council with regards to this application? And I don't see any. So I think that we will carry on, and I would like to thank those in attendance for their comments. Should council proceed with the adoption of the zoning bylaw amendment, notice of passing will be provided as prescribed by the Planning Act and a 20-day appeal period to the local planning appeal tribunal. So at this stage of the game, I would entertain a motion that the Council of the Municipality of West Perth now closes this public meeting at 8:14 and reconvenes to a regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Rose, seconded by Councillor Bell. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on, and we still have a few planning matters to deal with. So the first item is an application for consent to sever by Monteith Ritzma Phillips on behalf of Trestle Creek Farms Limited, care of Jeremy Damon. And I'm going to ask David to talk to this one, I guess, as well.
Thank you, Mayor McKenzie. And just as I'm speaking, I'll flip over to our reporting on this application for consent. So this application for consent proposes to sever an existing farm property in the Hibbert Ward, which has an area of approximately 150 acres, being the area shown in red and yellow combined. I will note for council that there was a previously approved severance off of the subject property in the 1990s, in 1993 to be more specific. So the area, the flag-shaped parcel shown here, which contains an existing a non-farm residential use, is in fact a separate property that was previously severed off the subject property. And in our investigations and discussions with the applicant's agent, Mr. Phillips, and through title search, we did not come across any restrictions on title that would prohibit any future severances on the subject property as part of our due diligence. I note that for council because there have been times in the past where we have hit restrictive covenants or restrictive agreements registered on title in days gone by before we had a policy which allowed for severance of existing farm dwellings. So I just would like to reassure council that we did not detect any such restrictions and have carried forward with providing a report concerning this application. So to summarize, the property is approximately 150 acres in size with frontage along line 21 in the Hibbert Ward. The severed farm lot in this case would have approximately 240 meters of frontage on line 21 and would be approximately 50 acres in size. The retained lot shown in red here would have approximately 350 meters of frontage and would have an area of approximately 92 acres of lot area. The severed lot contains existing field areas as well as a woodlot area to the south and is bounded by an existing water course that runs across the property. The retained lot in this case would wholly contain a much more significant portion of that water course, as well as several woodlots and a couple of existing cultivated areas. Policy guidance with respect to farm lot creation is a consideration under the provincial policy statement. Section 2.3.1 of the PPS states that prime agricultural areas shall be protected for the long-term use for agricultural activities, and that lot creation in these areas is discouraged and may only be permitted for agricultural uses, provided that the lots are of a size and appropriate for the type of agricultural use common in the area and sufficiently large to maintain flexibility for future changes in the type or the size of agricultural operations. The proposed consent application would result in the creation of new appropriately sized agricultural lots within a prime agricultural area as defined by the PPS, and would also ensure that an existing prime agricultural area is preserved for long-term agricultural use. There are no new or expanding livestock facilities that are proposed to be created as a result of the severance, and therefore MDS setbacks do not apply in this case. Of course, any new livestock facilities that would be proposed in future on either the severed or retained lots would of course be subject to the provisions of the MDS. Staff have therefore found that the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement. And similarly, we have evaluated the application against applicable policies of the County of Perth official plan and have found it to be consistent with and uphold the criteria of section 5621 as detailed in our planning report. Both the severed and retained lots would meet the minimum lot area requirements of zoning, being 22 hectares as the minimum lot area required in the local zoning bylaw. As well, each lot would also meet the minimum lot frontage requirement of 200 meters for agricultural uses. Therefore, we have not included a recommended condition of consent that concerns zoning, as both of the lots would conform to existing zoning requirements. We are recommending that West Perth Council recommend to the County of Perth Land Division Committee that the application for consent to sever be 28-21 submitted by Andrew Phillips on behalf of Trestle Creek Farms Limited be approved, subject to the 8 conditions which are outlined in our planning report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that members of council may have concerning the application. Thank you. And I will just quickly scroll over some photos that were taken at the end of July that illustrate the current site conditions on the ground, and forgive the lack of lighting. It was quite a cloudy day that day. So I'll stop sharing screen at this point and turn it back over to the mayor and council for any questions on this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Does council have any questions with what Dave has presented at this time? Oh, there he is. Doug, go ahead.
I've been chirping in, but nobody listens to me. David, or maybe Bob, I have a question. On the retained parcel, the yellow, the severed parcel, a new home would be able to be built there, correct? Because it meets the criteria, and now the severed house is off the other portion.
There would be an opportunity for subject to MDS to establish a new house on both parcels.
Excuse me, on both parcels, although there's already been a house severed off of one.
Yeah, as David alluded to, it's still consistent with our farm lot size policy that would allow a residential unit to be established on both.
Very interesting. Thank you.
So I think, and I'm interpreting what was said, and you can correct me, either Bob or David, when that severance went through, there was no stipulation that no further severances could be obtained on that parcel. Is that right? David?
Through the mayor, Mayor McKenzie, and also to address Deputy Mayor Wright's question as well, that is correct. There are no restrictions that were found to be present on title, nor there is no zoning provisions that would prohibit a new dwelling from being established in future on each of the severed and retained lots. And as I mentioned in my report, both of them do meet the minimum lot area requirements in zoning for agricultural use. And within that zone, a new farm dwelling is certainly something that would be permitted on each.
Okay, thank you. It doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while, there's one that slides through like that. Any other questions? Gotta look closely here. Okay, I don't see anybody else's hand is up. So I do have a recommendation here, and it is that the Council of the Municipality of West Perth received a report entitled Application for Consent to Sever, number B28/21, by Monteith Ritzma Phillips Professional Corporation, care of Andrew Phillips, on behalf of Trestle Creek Farms, affecting lands described as west half of Lot 17 and part of Lot 18, Concession 11 of the Hibbert Ward Municipality of West Perth, dated August the 16th, prepared by County Planner for information. And that Council recommends that the County of Perth Land Division Committee approve the application for consent to sever B28/21 for lands described as west half of Lot 17, part of Lot 18, Concession 11, Hibbert Ward, Municipality of West Perth, subject to the following 8 conditions. And with your permission, I won't read all 8 of those conditions. We've had them for the weekend to look at. So unless somebody wants it read, they're there for your information. So that is the resolution. Do we have a mover and seconder for that particular recommendation? Councillor Murray, and we need to look up at the screen too. Councillor Marshall, thank you. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor of the motion? That is carried. Thank you. The next item is an application for consent to, no, the next one is with regards to a deeming lot on in Mitchell. So it is, I'm trying to find the right page here, that planners report and adopt a bylaw number 60 deeming a lot 123 on plan 339 of the Mitchell Ward, not to be a lot on the registered plan of subdivision. David, I'll let you explain that one as well.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor McKenzie. Mayor, members of council, I'll just switch screen quickly to our report photo. I know deeming bylaws, we don't hit them too often, but we had one come through. And so this, again, to summarize, this is a request. And again, for some background, deeming bylaws, council can pass deeming bylaws, has permission to do so under Section 50 of the Planning Act. And this is made possible in cases where a plan of subdivision has been registered for more than 8 years. And this is certainly the case with Plan 339. It's quite an old plan in a well-established part of Mitchell. So what the owners of the property have requested is that council pass a deeming bylaw for the purpose of permitting them in future to build an addition to their existing bungalow, which is shown on the aerial photo here. So this would deem lot 123 on plan 339, which is this vacant portion shown here, not to be on a lot of, not to be a lot on a registered plan of subdivision, such that it can be merged on title with what is actually the former road allowance for Toronto Street West, which is this parcel to the north on which the Rolf's dwelling is currently situated. So that's the background to, I guess, the permission that council is permitted under the Planning Act, as well as the intent of Brad and Sarah Rolfe here for why they've made this request. So planning staff have reviewed the request to merge the existing parcels into one parcel by deeming lot 123 on plan 339 not to be a lot on a registered plan of subdivision. This consolidation would result in an enhanced, enlarged merged lot with respect to both frontage and lot area, which would allow the Rolfs to establish their additional, the addition to their existing dwelling. on a site which is otherwise currently constrained due to available buildable lot area shown here. The subject properties are both within the R2 zone as well as the floodplain zone of the Municipality of West Perth zoning bylaw. The grant, as mentioned, the granting of this request would permit the owners the future ability to expand and establish permitted use within the R2 zone, and therefore passing of a deeming bylaw represents an opportunity to facilitate both desirable and appropriate residential development that would be compatible with existing land uses in the immediate area. Based on staff's review, we are recommending that council approve this request to pass a deeming bylaw deeming lot 123 on plan 339 not to be a lot on a registered plan of subdivision, and have concluded that this request conforms with the Mitchell Ward official plan and also represents good planning. And just to illustrate further some current conditions on the site for council's information, that's the parcel map from the Land Registry Office shown there. These are some images that were taken by myself 4 days ago on August 12th, showing current site conditions. The Rolf's dwelling shown here on the former road allowance for Toronto Street. And then of course, lot 123 is generally the grassed area shown here south of the dwelling. And of course, the request that was provided. So again, we are recommending that council approve this request for deeming bylaw, and I will stop sharing screen and turn it back to Mayor and Council for any questions on this request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. And I found what I couldn't find before. The request, as Dave has mentioned, for a deeming bylaw came to us through Monteith, Ritzma, and Phillips on behalf of Bradley and Sarah Rolfe. So that was who was asked for it. Are there any questions on Dave's presentation on the deeming bylaw? Doug?
3 to 5 years ago, we did something with this house already. Can anybody verify what it was? It had to do with at the north end, and Jeff already knows the question, or Bob. Oh, Bob's already there. Will that be taken away?
Bob, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we had dealt with a minor variance to allow a second story addition to the house and enclose the garage because the building was too close to the north property limit on Toronto Street and too close to the road allowance. The variance took place. It was approved through cost of construction and the timelines. I believe there was a 2-year timeline to get a building permit, and the Rolfs had decided that it was too expensive to go that way. So we discussed some other options, and this direction is from those discussions.
Okay. Any further questions with regards to this application? Or request, I guess I should say. Okay, the recommendation here is that that the Council Municipality of West Perth receive the planner's report and adopt bylaw number 60, 2021, being a deeming lot on 123 on plan 339 of the Mitchell Ward, not to be a lot on a registered plan of subdivision. Do we have a mover and seconder for that at this time? Councillor Marshall and Councillor Rose. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. All right. The next item then, 7.1.3 is a request for an encroachment agreement by Monteith Ritzma Phillips on behalf of 2385193 Ontario Inc. And David, I'll turn that over to you as well.
Okay, thank you, Mayor McKenzie, and members of council. I'll just share a screen here to illustrate a site drawing for the property in question and what this proposal entails. So to summarize, this property, the property shown here, where my cursor is located at 6997 John Street. in the village of Dublin. Some may be familiar that this is the former Safina building in the village of Dublin, located at the southwest corner of John Street and Mill Street. So this application, the applicant has applied on behalf of the property owners to request the council pass a bylaw that would actually permit the municipality to execute an addendum to an existing encroachment agreement that was entered into for the property back in 2003. The purpose of the original agreement was to legally recognize a situation whereby a portion of the building, this area is shown here, save and except for the shaded area where my cursor is circling, but basically that there's a portion of the building that for some time had encroached over it, the legal boundaries of the property and into the municipal right-of-way for John Street. So the owner, based on discussions with the owner's agent, Mr. Phillips, and further discussions internally with West Perth staff, it was realized that the original encroachment agreement, which had an existing plan attached to it, did not account for the shaded area shown here, which is indicated as further encroachment on the drawing. Essentially, the owners want to build a overhang over top of an existing point of entrance and exit into the building. And in order to allow for that awning to be constructed over that entrance into the building, it required that the original encroachment agreement be revisited and revised with a new drawing to illustrate the extent of that encroachment. And so to also summarize, the encroachment, the proposed addendum would not cause any further distanced encroachment into the right-of-way beyond the current plane of the building. So I will note that for council that this is purely adding area and would not cause further encroachment past the existing exterior plane of the building into the municipal right-of-way. The subject property is within the light industrial zone M1-12 of the West Perth bylaw. The existing building is considered a legal non-compliant use by the zoning bylaw. It is a permitted use that does not currently meet other requirements of the zone, including the exterior side yard setback with respect to the property boundary at John Street. As staff have concluded that since the building is a long-standing non-compliant structure with respect to zoning, and that an existing encroachment agreement does exist, the proposed awning to be constructed within the shaded area shown here would not cause any further reduction in compliance with the provisions of the zoning bylaw, and that it is an appropriate mechanism in this case to address this extension of the awning through an amended encroachment agreement. So therefore, we are of the opinion that in this case, it is reasonable to grant the request that the owners have submitted through their agent, and that this request would not cause any to the existing passage of traffic on vehicles along the existing right-of-way. So that is summary of our report and recommendation, and summary of what this request concerns. I'll stop sharing screen at this point and turn it over to Mayor and Council for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you, David. Any questions with what David has presented there? Okay, seeing none, we do have a recommendation, and it is that the Council of the Municipality of West Perth receive the planner's report to adopt bylaw number 61 to permit the municipality to execute the proposed encroachment agreement addendum. We have a mover and seconder for that. I'm looking at the screen now because I don't think I've taken anybody up there. Moved by Nicholas, thank you, and seconded by Cheryl. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, David. It looked like it was the David Gundrum show here tonight. Lots of planning matters going on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor McKenzie. And I'd just like to take a moment to thank both council and West Perth staff. It's been a great time working with everybody in Mitchell, and I'm going to miss everybody, but new adventures await me in Perth East. So I just want to say thank you. It's been great working with everybody, and I'm sure we'll rub shoulders again sometime. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Dave. We've appreciated all your involvement in West Perth as well. Okay, moving on. Next item, 7.2, is the Chief Building Officials Report. And Bob is there. So Bob, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Your Worship. Building permit summary for the month of July. We had just over $6.4 million in construction value, 34 permits and 2 zoning certificates. The permits are listed. There's still quite a bit of construction activity in the agricultural sector as well as the residential sector. I'll field any questions there are.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Any questions on the building permits at this time? Okay, I don't see anybody's hand up. So we do have a recommendation that we receive the July building permit report dated August the 16th. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Trinkowski and Councillor Tam. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. The next is Fire Chief's report, and it has to do with the fire dispatch and the antenna installation, and Bill is here. Bill, I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Tonight's report is requesting council support to grant Owen Sound Emergency Communications Center permission to install an antenna and the supporting infrastructure on the municipal water tower on Arthur Street. West Perth Environmental Services have evaluated the request and are in support. What's a little bit different about this is typically we would have an agreement prepared at this time for this type of installation. However, we are still trying to finalize the actual dispatch services agreement. Once the dispatch services agreement has been signed, we'll then prepare an agreement for this installation. So basically tonight, we're just looking for council's support that will let Owen Sound start the process of gathering quotes and getting their items together for the installation. And once the main agreement has been processed, we'll bring another agreement back for this installation. And I would gladly try and answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Questions for Bill? Councillor Tam.
Yeah, I have no problem with supporting this bill. I just had a question about, at one time I thought we signed an agreement where we were paying FS Partners for equipment out there. Is that still going on?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that. I don't recall any recent invoices to FS Partners for from the municipality. It may be captured in the overall fire tower, the 5 towers throughout Perth County that's administered by Perth County, but I can certainly look into that.
I'm not sure if anyone else recalls that. I think when Crystal was here, she went around and got agreements with everyone where equipment was, and I don't think they even knew it was there before, and then we had to start paying for it. But yeah, I'm not sure if anybody else recalls that or not, but
I think that's where you'll find it, Bill, but you can check into it. But that was a county agreement at that time, and there was a set fee. I can't tell you now what it was, so much a year that was paid there. So my question, I guess, is do we have any of our equipment out there at the elevator?
At FS Partners?
Yes.
I'm not sure. Yes, the fire dispatch, the Perth County Connect system. I believe that is the one that Crystal probably would have been talking to council about. That was the interoperability system. I believe that is out there. And there is also some of the county dispatch equipment out there as well. But Owen Sound has determined that the water tower on Arthur is better suited for their installation.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I think we tried to make that point previously, but weren't successful. Any other questions for Bill? So what you're saying then, Bill, is basically, when this gets going, we're basically done with any equipment out on the FS partners. It'll be all on our water tower.
Once again, I would have to confirm exactly what equipment is out at FS Partners. I do believe, like I said, the Perth County Connect Plus system, the interoperability radio system, I believe it is out there, and that is something that we're a part of.
Okay, all right.
I can certainly look into it and report back to council.
All right, no, that's fine. Okay, any other questions then at this time? All right, so we do have a recommendation here, and it is that the municipality of West Perth received a report titled Fire Dispatch Antenna Installation, dated August the 16th, and the council supports the request from Owen Sound Emergency Communications Center to install a fire dispatch antenna and communications gear on the West Perth Water Tower at 97 Arthur Street, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign and seal the fire dispatch antenna equipment agreement with Owen Sound Emergency Communications Center once the fire dispatch service agreement with Owen Sound Emergency Communications Center has been executed. Mover and seconder for that motion. Councillor Marshall and Councillor Harold. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Great,
right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Moving on then, Recreation and Facilities Manager, Darcy, 7.4.1, concession booth operations options.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've listed 3 options. I'll quickly go through them. Option 1 is that we go with the RFI like we have in previous years. I feel this option hasn't worked as we intended the last couple of years, and hasn't been a success like we were hoping for. And with COVID and the time of year we're in, I just don't think we would have too many interested. So that's option 1. Option 2 is that we research alternate options for vending. So some sort of coffee, some sort of food. I haven't gone into great detail because I wanted to see what council's wishes were, but I would definitely explore the options. And then we would leave the concession booth open that if a tournament or on a Hawks game night that they wanted to bring somebody in, of course, that would have to follow certain guidelines and have food handling certificate and work with the health unit to make sure we were checking all the boxes that they want checked, but that they would have the option to do that on a rental basis. And then option 3 would be to open up the concession booth and just put vending machines in there. I think that's one thing we'll struggle with a little bit in option 2 is finding the right spot for the vending machines that they don't hinder our other stuff. But option 3 would give us the concession booth to use for the vending operation, but would not allow for rentals. And I think my recommendation is option 2, just to the fact that we can still use it for rentals and tournaments and that we would have the other option for vending machines. So I'll gladly take any questions from council.
All right, thanks, Darcy. Questions for Darcy on those options? Councillor Chinkowski?
Through you, Your Worship, Darcy, have you received or asked or received any feedback from the user groups like minor hockey or Mitchell Hawks or figure skating or the other groups with regards to the concession booth?
Not yet for this year. I haven't gone with these options to them, but there was feedback in previous years that it didn't work very well for them and they wanted to see other options. So these are the options that I'm putting in front of council, but I could definitely go to the user groups and see what they prefer.
Councillor Marshall had a question.
Going with option 2 this year wouldn't preclude us from going back to option 1 next year. Is that given the current situation? I'm just I'd hate to see us close that booth down permanently if there's a do it.
Yep, that's fair. And I don't think any of the options would stop us from going back. Even if we put the vending machines in, we're not going to rip everything out. So we could go back to option 1 or 2 in another year, but option 2 would definitely not take us away from doing it any other option in any other year.
Councillor Tam?
I just wondered, Darcy, would there be such a thing as an option 4, running it ourselves?
Yep. Yeah,
Is
that would be
like
option
he-
4. I just think it's going to be very hard with staffing and procurement right now. But if that's council's wishes, then I can definitely explore that and see if I can get staff in place. It wouldn't be a recommendation, but if council wanted me to look into that, I can definitely look into that.
My only comment is I think if we run the booth again, that we need to try and ensure that it's open regular hours. Like people say that they complain when they run the booth that people come here with coffee from Tim Hortons, but they don't know if the booth's going to be open or not. So you make sure you're covered.
Yep.
So we just have to make sure it's regular hours if the door is open, I think.
Other comments? Councillor Trinkowski?
I would support Councillor Tam's idea of an option 4 in the future. I think it's worth pursuing further.
Okay, anybody else? So when you say an option 4 in the future, am I picking up that you're willing to go with the recommendation at this time of option 2?
Well, I guess it just boils down to a question of timing. If there's not enough time to get prepared for option 4, then it would appear that the option that Darcy recommends is either that or have nothing at all. So I would prefer option 4. I would think that would be the better option, but if there's not enough time to get that going, then we need a backup plan.
So to do an option 4, Darcy, you would, I'm assuming you'd have to probably advertise for somebody to run it, and then we would have to stock it. We're in middle of August right now. Is that a challenge to have ready for the, I guess, the fall and winter season?
It would be a challenge, but it wouldn't be impossible, I don't think. But it would be probably like an October start, but normally there's not really any games or anything in September. It's mostly tryouts anyway. So we would spend the month of September getting staffed and prepared and trained and ready to go for as close to the start of October as I could. But we would have to make the decision tonight that that's the way we're going to go, because I would probably put advertisement out for staff as of tomorrow to get things going.
Mr. Mayor?
Sorry, yep, Doug, go ahead.
Darcy, I haven't read up on the reopening plan for arenas. How many people are allowed in? Do you have to do all the COVID protocols? We're going to talk about this, the ball thing in a minute. Does everybody have to sign the sheet when they come in and all that too? Because we'll have staff at the gate every day. Everybody's going to have to do the COVID protocol, correct?
Correct. Yeah, all user groups will have to do their own screening protocols, but everybody will be screened. We'll know who's in the facility at all times. As of right now, we're still working with the health unit, but it's looking like about 150 capacity for the ice pad. So the actual game will be normal, and the operation will be normal, and we'd still have room for about 100 people to 200 people, or 100 to 150 people in the spectator area. But I'm still working on the exact calculation for that.
So even for the Hawks, they can only have like 150, maybe. You'll get the number someday. X number of people. It's not like they can put 600 people in there.
No.
At the start, we don't know what'll transpire later, though, right?
Yeah. It's looking like right now it'll be max like a 50 to 75, if we're lucky, percent capacity throughout the facility.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other discussion with regards to Darcy's recommendation? Nicholas, sorry.
In option 2, a vending machine, can we nearly have the same food availability in a vending machine as we could with a live person in a concession?
Not exactly. We could definitely do like sandwiches and cold food in a refrigerated vending machine. I know they got a lot of that option. It would be the hot options, like the hot dogs and the French fries. I just don't think there's the vending machine options right now to do too many of those.
I think the sky is the limit for vending machines for hot options today. If you wanted them, I don't think that's a restriction that you can't have hot as an option in a vending machine.
Okay, yeah, and to be fair, I haven't totally explored it. I just haven't seen those options out right now, but maybe there is those options.
And I'm just thinking the facility to the north in North Perth, the new facility they have there. My recollection, and I have only been in it once, but my recollection is there is no booth there, is there?
Yeah, the new Steve Kerr, they built it with no concession booth. And so they open up the kitchen with a little window to do for like a junior B night game that a rental group comes in and does hot food out of that. But other than that, they do not have a concession booth.
And comments about any other facilities around, like I'm thinking Exeter, Nicholas or Sherry Seaforth, they still operate a booth?
They do, but I think they had trouble as well. Someone running it as a business. I think the difference, this is just my opinion, it's not can be totally corrected by somebody else. But I think when you're trying to rent it out and use it as a money-making business for someone, it's not really viable. There isn't enough traffic through. But if you're looking at it from a municipality where you just want to make enough to cover the wages of your staff, then it's a doable thing. But when you're somebody who's trying to do that to make a living, it's a bit of a hard sell but I think as a municipality, just with my little bit of experience with this as a municipality, if you can just cover your student wages that are working in the booth, then it's a little easier as a sell. You know what I'm trying to say? But if you're trying to sell it to somebody who is a person who wants to make a living doing this, it's a pretty hard sell because it's really hard to make a living on $1 treat bags. But you could probably cover your base costs and not make a profit.
The other thing you have to realize too, Sherry, is that we're looking at reduced attendance. It's not going to be a normal type of season. So
that's sort of what I'm getting at as well. So I mean, the only what I'm saying is if you're looking at option 4, is it viable in the sense that could we make enough just to cover the food we buy and a student? It's only one student at a time. It's not like there's big crowds. So
all right.
Anyway, food for thought.
Now, any further discussion on this? Okay, Councillor Tam.
I'd make a motion that we pursue an option 4 and open and run the booth ourselves. It's been a while since I've been in Arena, but I always like, St. Mary's Mountain, like those booths are great and they run them themselves. So I would move that we look at an option 4 of running it ourselves.
Okay, so Mike is moving that, and that we basically, it's a 4th option and that we would be running it ourselves. And you want to second that, Dean?
Yes, I would second.
Okay, so it's been duly moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this issue? Dan?
If I may, Council, offer a friendly amendment that if we're unsuccessful in recruitment, that Council provide direction right now, perhaps on the other 3 options that were presented tonight.
Good point. Good point. We could, certainly address that, and it would help staff in deciding where they want to go. And I guess the other, what I was thinking here, with the COVID that we're in, an option 4 might work well in a year's time when you're back to kind of a normal situation, if there is such a thing. Whereas this year we're looking at probably at the best case scenario, 75% is what Darcy said. So, we could go, we'll make that motion if that's okay with the mover and seconder that we go with this option 4, but we have an amendment that if we're unsuccessful in getting help or whatever, that we can rely and go back to option 2 for this year. This would be just for this year alone.
I'm good with that.
Dean, are you okay?
Yes, I'm agreeable to that.
Okay, Dan, do you wanna say what the motion is now? Yeah. Oh, sorry, Nicholas had a question. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. To Mike and Dean that moved and seconded, is cost important to you guys? Do you want to run it as a business, or do we need to see any of that before making a decision, whether it is cost prohibitive to have somebody in there running the concession stand, or you'd like to see it either way, even if it is a lost leader?
Councillor Tam?
I'd like to see it either way. $1,000 one way or the other isn't going to make or break us. I think it's an opportunity for some young people for employment and to make this a better place. That's what I believe.
I would just like to see this community have some fun again. I think we have waited long enough. That would be my response. A few dollars here and there. I just want to see our community get back to being a community and having some fun again, like the way we used to.
Okay. I was going to make a comment about operating the booth and not in it for a profit. It's kind of like farming, isn't it? You know? Yeah. Okay, Dan, do you know how we're going to word this motion?
I won't have it as elegantly as put previously, but that council directs staff to proceed with option 4 and to pursue recruitment to operate the concession booth. And if recruitment is unsuccessful, staff proceed with option 2. Does that satisfy everyone?
I think that work for you, Mike, and for Dean. Okay. All right. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Darcy?
Yeah, just gonna ask a quick question. Do we see it as a 7-night a week, open every night type done, or game nights, or games?
Just from my recollections in the past, when I had a couple of kids that actually worked here as their high school job, it was definitely open during the Hawks games, always. And it was open in the prime time during specific nights. So ring at night, it was open from 5 till they were done. And on hockey's major practice nights, it was always open. It was never open on curling night. So I think that was Wednesdays, right? I don't believe it was ever open for curling. And same with Saturday. It was open during the prime Saturday hours. It was not open Saturday night for just your pickup stuff. Same, or unless there was a Hawks game.
Okay, thanks. That's enough information for me.
All right. Oh, sorry, Dean, go ahead.
Through you, your worship, Darcy, that's Councillor Bell mentioned the different user groups. That's alludes to my question that I posed earlier about consulting the user groups. So I think you'll find from the user groups what the hours structure should look like, and your hours structure will also be a function of the availability of the employees as well. So, thank you.
All right. Okay, so it's been duly moved and seconded. I don't think there's any further discussion on this issue, is there? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, just hold on. I can't look at the screen and around the room at the same time. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 out of 11. So that is carried. Motion is carried. Okay. Next item then, Darcy.
I believe the next is Optimus Club Accessible Playground, correct? Yep. Okay. This is a bit of a bookkeeping report. Due to the reserve policy, we do have to get a resolution from council to move anything out of reserve or put everything in reserve. And as you can see, this is Optimus funds. We have just agreed to keep them for them. So what we're doing is moving the 2020 funds into the 2019 plus. That would give enough to pay for the playground, and then we are paying the invoice of the playground from that reserve. So just looking for a resolution from council.
Yep. Okay. Any questions on that? All right, we'll get the motion on the floor then that Municipality of West Perth approves the transfer of funds from the 2020 Lions Park Playground donation account of $16,049.44 to the Lions Park Playground Reserve, and that council approves the capital project Optimus Club Accessible Playground in the amount of $74,326.69 net HST to be funded from the Lions Park Playground 2019 reserve. Mover and seconder for that. Councillor Bell and Councillor or Deputy Mayor Ida, I think, had his hand up. Did you? Yes. Okay. Any further discussion on that?
Walter, if I may.
Yes, sorry.
So $16,000 is coming from already fundraised, and then 48,000 is coming from our playground reserve to cover the invoice.
No, so that other reserve is still the Optimus Club fundraising money that was put in reserve.
Okay.
Then we just had to have an account for this year, and then we got to move it over to the reserve to pay for it all, but it's all Optimus Club reserve.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
We're just moving money around. It's just not our money. Okay. I think we're ready for vote. Yep. Okay. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. All right. The next item then is the International Softball Congress Challenge Cup.
Yes, so normally I wouldn't be bringing a report like this. I'd be excited to host a tournament like this, and we are excited, but I also wanted to just put it through council to get the comfort level, because it would be having teams travel from all over Ontario. As you can note, I did speak to the health unit, and I gave their response in my report that they are comfortable with the regionalization as long as the following guidelines that are in there are followed. There's stuff for the facility to do and stuff for the permit holder to do. So we would assure that all those were followed before we approved it, and then we would approve their COVID-19 safety plan. So just looking to see if the council's comfort level with the tournament like this.
Open it up for questions or discussion. Yeah, I see. Doug?
I participated in a tournament exactly like this weekend, and that's why I'm sitting here, because there was people from as far away as Ottawa, Windsor, Owen Sound. The way they did it was very economical. Everybody had a sheet they filled out. Everybody wore a mask all the time they were in the ballpark. I'm sure Darcy has all the, when you went on the field, you could take your mask off if you stayed 6 feet away. Unique part about this is they had a bar right in the middle of the two ball diamonds, a permanent bar. And as soon as you stepped in that bar, you could take your mask off because it was a licensed bar. It was totally funny that you could move 6 inches and not be part of the ball team, be part of the thing. I think it worked very well. It was in Cambridge at a double ice rink, double ball diamond facility. But that's the reason I'm sitting home tonight, because I did correspond with 500 people on the weekend. We all filled out our COVID sheets. They have to keep it for a month. And you put your phone number down every day. You fill the sheet out every day, and you got a wristband every day. So I think it can be done if Darcy feels comfortable with it.
And I guess that's the question that I would have. I can look at it from two sides here. I'm looking at Doug, and he has a little spot in his forehead. I just wonder if he had a little fever or not tonight, but maybe not. How and who controls the number of people that would come in?
So that would be on the permit holder to have someone at the gates. We'd have to have one gate of entry only, and they would have to keep the number down. Now, if the number looked high, we would have to just call the OPP, and they would be the enforcement. We wouldn't have staff available to start kicking people out, but that would be the OPP that would have to come in and enforce. But it would be up to the permit holder to sign that they are only going to allow this many people, the capacity of the 4 diamonds.
So what is going to be our capacity, Darcy?
Right now we're 100 per diamond, so it's 400. But health unit did give me for a tournament like that a equation that I can check out the surface area and get an exact number, but right now we're looking at 400 is what we're allowing at this present time.
Okay. And, you know, I guess the scary thing, you know, is what you're unsure of is they're coming from all over Ontario, you know, and it's no different, I guess, than what happened on the weekend in Port Dover. What was it, 35,000 motorcycles engaged on that little village or town. But on the other side, the flip side of the coin here is we can't have a Mitchell Fair this year because of COVID regulations. But here we are, we're looking at a ball tournament. 600 is the cap, according to Darcy. So I can see both sides, and it's up for discussion for council as to what we do here. So I've said enough. I open it up. Sherry?
That was going to be my question. What is the park cap like as an outdoor, like can the fair's having an outdoor concert? Is it capped at 100 or can it be 600 people sitting there watching an outdoor concert? What is our park rules?
So right now we're 100 per diamond if you're using all 4 diamonds, but it's all the space that you're using. You got to pick out the space that you're using, and then you can use the equation from the health unit. I forget it's 1.33 times, and anyway, you get the calculation of how many people they are allowed to be in that space. Here in the indoors, it's a little less, and we've actually went less than what they're recommending because sometimes it can be a little scary when you actually do the math. But so we're doing the number, we're definitely under what the health unit's recommending, and then what our comfort level is beyond that. But it's all about the space and how many people you can space out.
So a follow-up to that would be no one else would be able to come into the park that day, period. Like nobody could walk their dog. No one can use the skateboard park. Would you have to close the skateboard park? Like, because your park is full,
yes,
right?
Yes, we would only be able to have one entrance because we'd have to screen everybody that came into that.
We'd have to be fairly, like starting now, we'd have to be pretty diligent letting people know that they cannot go to the Crystal Palace. They can't go to the skateboard park. They can't walk their dog. They can't use the park, period. So I don't know how, I mean, it's fine if that's the way it's going to be, but we'd have to be pretty diligent to let people know now that the park is completely closed for a private event.
Councillor Marshall.
That's if they have 100 people. I mean, if somebody goes there and they're not full, then they can certainly go in and use the skateboard park, I'm assuming. Well, I don't know how many people they're going to have at the ball tournament, but so I think it's terrific. It's within the provincial guidelines. You know, as a community, we have a pretty high rate of vaccination going on to keep the risk down for our local community. I think it's important for us to start getting back to these sorts of things and getting back to a normal life. And that's what the point of the vaccinations were. That's what we've been told all along. We're there. I think we move forward and go ahead with this event.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rose.
I just want to say that I agree that it would be nice to have the community get back to some kind of normalcy, whatever that happens to be. And if the powers to be government is allowing us to do it, I think we should take advantage of it. And as Dean said, let's have some fun.
Anybody else? Looking at the screen. Don't see anybody's hand up. Okay, if there's no further comments, the recommendation here is that the Council of the Municipality of West Perth approve the use of Peterson Park for the International Softball Congress, the ISC Ontario Challenge Cup, pending approval of a COVID-19 safety plan. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Marshall, Councillor Tam. Any further questions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Okay, good. All right. Activity report, Darcy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Activity reports in front of you. One thing I will note out is in the facility maintenance, the pool, we have noticed sand starting to come through the filters. Everything is still safe, but that is showing a bad sign of deteriorating in the filters, and that was brought up in the pool audit, but that just reassured it for us, and that is something that we will have to address in the off season. We will not be able to open if that's an issue. So just a little heads up when we go into the budget of 2022 that'll be something that'll be on the list. Other than that, I would gladly take any questions.
Okay, questions for Darcy, Councillor Marshall?
This is actually isn't a question for what's happened, but possibility of something in the future. I understand St. Mary's, they're getting some kayaks that they're going to rent through the library. And I just wondered with our reservoir down there, I think it's a far better place for kayak trips and paddling than St. Mary's area. So I'm wondering if that might be something we could look at in the future. I think with our pool there, it's an excellent opportunity to, and I don't know if there's space there to store those kayaks, but just wondering if there's a possibility of getting a couple kayaks and some life jackets, and perhaps do the same thing next year.
Yeah, we can 100% look into that. Never actually crossed my mind, but it is a good idea. So we will definitely look over that in the off season.
Anybody else? Okay, if there's no further questions, if we recommendation that we receive Darcy's report dated August 16th as presented. Okay, Councillor Marshall and Councillor Murray, thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, thank you. Consolidated statements then, and we have Wendy up here. So Wendy, I'll turn it over to you and you can dazzle us with your figures.
Well, good evening, Council. You'll have the consolidated statements as of July 31st in front of you, and everything is looking favorable so far, showing we're in a good position by $398,000. And so if there's any questions, I'd gladly take them.
All right. Questions for Wendy on the consolidated statements? A lot of information there. Okay, if there's no further questions then, motion is that we accept the West Perth consolidated statements as of July 31st, 2021 report dated August 16th as information. So mover and seconder for that would be in order. Councillor Rose, thank you. And I'm looking at the screen. Who wants to go first? Deputy Mayor Wright, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Okay, Dan, 7.6.1.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, Council. Before you today is the results of the parking bylaw survey that staff ran starting on July 20th. It ran for about 3 weeks and it utilized SurveyMonkey. The survey was designed with some multiple choice and some open-ended questions. We tried to just focus on some of the complaint areas that we've received in the past, but as well as leave it open-ended to get some feedback from respondents and the residents on how they felt about the proposed amendments and the bylaw as it exists today. I'd like to just generally say it went very well. We were very excited with the results. We had almost 300. We did have over 300 respondents. So I want to publicly thank everyone that filled the survey out, including the ones that weren't always the most joyful to read. But nevertheless, I think the next steps for staff are we are going to take this back and dissect it a little bit more and bring forward some an amendment bylaw for first reading with options in it for council to review at that time, unless council is satisfied with the information here today and wants to provide further direction. That's we would certainly adhere to that. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, questions for Dan? I found it interesting the number of comments about parking on one side of the street. Right now, we really don't have, I don't know whether we have any streets that are designated parking on one side or not, but
we do have
right?
a few.
Yeah. But that seemed to be a common thread throughout the survey to enforce it. Councillor Marshall.
Just a comment, this certainly seems to be a issue of concern to the public, given the number of responses to this. So I think it would be interested and come back, see what you guys come back with. So.
Right. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Motion here then that Municipality of West Perth accept the parking bylaw survey report dated August 16th as information. Mover and seconder for that. Councillor Rose and Councillor Bell. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? If any, that is carried. All right. Municipal election voting methods.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, before you, staff is just looking to get kind of an early start on the 2022 election, and we're just looking for direction on how council would like to proceed with the voting method.
Okay, questions? Nicholas?
I wasn't terribly happy with the Dominion's service that they provided at our last election, having an outage in the middle of the most important day. So either I need some insurance from them of what they have done to improve it for this next year coming up, or we had also done an RFP, and I think simply voting was the cheaper solution at the time. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd be interested to know, maybe send it back to Dan to find out, hey, how much work, staff time would it be to switch over to simply voting for our next election, or get some assurances from Dominion.
Okay, so noted. Dan, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor, and through Your Worship, I just want to clarify for Council that at this point in time, we're not proposing a vendor. I recognize we went with Dominion for the last election, but we are just looking for what method Council would like to use, and then we will move forward with RFPing that vendor or selecting that vendor. Certainly, we're going to look back and see why we didn't go in with the collective RFP. It's hard for me to sit here and guess as to why those decisions were made when I wasn't here, but we're definitely going to go back and look at all possible vendors. We are not in any way proposing Dominion at this time.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Councillor Rose.
Is there a chance that we could have people that do want to come in and vote manually? I don't know what the proper term for that is. The way we used to do it, would that still be an option as well as, say, the computer or the telephone?
Dan?
If we were going to utilize electronic system, that the people could come for a polling station, but that polling station would be electronic. So it'd be the same as doing it in your living room or anything like that, but you'd be doing it here on municipal laptop ultimately.
It was, last time, there was, being we have a lot of seniors in the area, some of them were really struggling. Even if you did it on phone, it wasn't always. Some people got through very easy, some didn't. Same as a computer, as Nicholas said, some of it crashed, didn't work so well. Was there any special reason why they couldn't just come in and put an X? Like, why was that not allowed?
It's something we can go back and analyze, but as I understand it right now, it's more just picking the system, and then that system's easier, and that's your ballot. When you approve the ballot, if you were to have electronic voting and in person with a ballot card, it's just a different set of approvals. So it's something we can explore if there's an opportunity to do a hybrid.
I'll just offer, it's a good question, and we actually looked into it a little bit last time. And one of the problems you run into is making sure that you don't have opportunities for voting twice. So you have to rationalize the voting lists, and I think it would be again with whichever vendor we go through a process and select. I think certainly staff are very strongly recommending electronic voting system. We did a workaround to support residents that weren't comfortable, and we set up workstations in 4, I think, locations. We set one up at the Ritz, we had one at the municipal office, one at the library, so 3 for sure, and I'm not sure if we had a 4th one. We certainly learned some lessons from that Dan won't be familiar with, because Dan wasn't here to run that election, but I think we'll gather that input and take this input and move forward. I frankly don't think the option of, and we're not suggesting the option of a regular ballot. We're suggesting a mail or a phone or a computer ballot system. If we can get past that decision tonight, we can try to build in the other concerns that you have about making it run smooth. But I think that system is definitely the system we want to see. We're recommending council consider going with.
So we're absolutely not doing that. You walk in and like they used to do. That's not allowed.
Well, no, I would say that we had a hybrid version of that where people could walk in and we could walk them through voting and support them. And if you're going to do, I think we found last time, if you're going to do digital, in order to keep the mailing lists secure and make sure there wasn't double voting, you had to either do all of one or all of the other. So I would say if we intend to go back to doing digital again, and I'm using digital to describe mail and computer, or mail or computer, we could look at how, if there is a way that we could create a hybrid for those that really wanted to do a ballot. And I think we could ask the vendor. I just know last time the challenge was keeping preserving the integrity of the mailing list was a very critical question. And that code that you have to use to get access to it basically meant you'd have to turn paper ballots into the code. And so I think we can explore those options, but we don't have those answers now. And I think it's great discussion to get the concerns. I know we had a post sort of election discussion about this, and we're back visiting it again. And I think we certainly recall the concerns that we had, and we want to try to make it work better this time.
I think the last time, I think, could have been a little better. There seemed to be reluctance on the part of some staff to help seniors, as Murray has indicated. You got to realize that most of the seniors are not computer literate. They are afraid of a computer, as a matter of fact. And there just seemed and I was in the office that one day, and of course it didn't help when everything crashed, but they would come in and they were showed the computer and the screen was brought up, but they would have felt better if we had a staff person that was, what's the word? A secure person that could actually say, okay, we're going to vote for you. This is the person you want. This is what we've done. And you can see it on the screen who you voted for, and make them feel, that it's actually happened. That wasn't the case the last time, and some of them were getting pretty frustrated, and it's unfortunate. But I know what you're saying, Murray, with regards to a paper ballot, and it's kind of the same thing. It's supposed to be a secret ballot, so if you write it on a piece of paper, you're going to give it to somebody to punch it into a computer. So I'd far sooner, if that's the way we're going to go, let's do it in the computer, but let's have some staff or a neutral person that they would feel comfortable with that could input it for them, and that they would actually think that they're still, not think that they are still doing what their rights are. That's my comment. It would maybe help the situation.
And if we could put that somehow out there, I don't know, through the paper or how we would do it, that the people would know that. I think it would help alleviate maybe a lot of, like you said, stress or anger.
Yeah. Well, it's just, like they're just not computer literate. And, give us the old way. Yeah. So Cheryl's got a comment. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah, I just want to comment that I think, I realize the seniors struggle with some of the new technology. Did we last have anybody go into the nursing home, into the villa, Ritz Villa?
Yes, we did. We set up a polling station at the Villa, I believe. I'm quite certain we did.
And Mitchell Nursing Home.
And Mitchell Nursing Home. That was the fourth one I was trying to come up with, yeah.
Councillor Marshall.
I don't know if you have these numbers, or I'm curious the difference in voter turnout between in person and the electronic voting.
I do not have those numbers.
I think we went to online voting or computer voting to bring our numbers up because they were falling drastically, and we thought we would maybe attract younger voters, but I don't think that happened. And as the results of the previous election and the last election, we dropped a few percentage again. So I'm not sure what the answer is, Jeff. I always say vote early and vote often, but I don't think they're going to allow that either.
No, and I would just add, and I feel a little uncomfortable answering these clerk type questions, but I was here for the 2018 election. We also did electronic voting in the 2014 election, I believe. So it was our second time through. I think that the variables to compare are pretty tricky. Obviously, the demographic is a big part of the variable, but also the races that you have. And we had only 2 races out of we had a couple of acclamations, which can really affect voter turnout. So those kinds of variables make it hard to measure. I think the best thing, I think the thing we can do for you is Dan has established connections with the other clerks, and clerks are going to be meeting regularly, and obviously and will continue to meet regularly, and the election will become a very big topic, and learning from the experiences of others. I thought we had a lot of success. I know not everybody was 100% happy, but I think the library polling station and the municipal polling station, which were the 2 that I was at or around, I thought there was a lot of success with helping people walk through. But it's a very fine line about, protecting that person's privacy, but also teaching them how to run a mouse, because frankly, we were running into many residents who had never run a mouse before. And if you haven't actually done that, and you haven't, it's a pretty daunting thing. So I think we'll have to, talking with other municipalities, find if there's other ways to do that, or if the privacy of the 5-digit code would allow ballots to be entered by staff so they knew the code but not the person, or that kind of thing. Those are perhaps the variations we can look for. But I know from talking to other clerks, the experience of going back to a paper election is probably not very desirable.
I think Councillor Matheson had a question. No? Oh, okay. I thought your hand was up there. Anybody else? Okay. Just thought of Nicholas's comment at the start of this discussion about Dominion voting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they were in charge of the voting U.S. presidential election too. Councillor Marshall.
I just, I understand about not wanting to go back to the hand counting. There are certain machines that allow for in-person electronic counting of machines. My personal experience running different, large nomination meetings, political party, is that that in-person voting actually is just as effective at bringing people out as electronic people feel more engaged and actually coming out and a little more personally involved in it. I certainly don't know what the numbers are, but that's my own personal experience on it. And I get not wanting to go back to marking X and hand counting ballots, but certainly there are options with the ballot counters and that sort of thing. I know I'd used Dominion before for something like that, and there are other services that do that. So I think that's something to consider too.
Just have a question. We were just
Go
saying,
ahead.
how's the federal election going to go? Because are they not? It's usually a hybrid system. You can do both. Or either or. Pardon me. So
Generally, we haven't had word yet, but we know that they are looking here to have a polling station in this very location. Moving forward, I think that they're generally a hybrid in the sense that you can mail in as opposed to digital, but we can explore.
Because I was thinking they're usually a hybrid of some sort. They have many different options. Polling stations, computer, mail in. So it's got to be out there somewhere.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, we'll keep moving on here. So the recommendation that we have is that the Council of Municipality of West Perth receive the voting methods 2022 municipal election report dated August the 16th as information, and that the Council of Municipality of West Perth approve the use of internet telephone voting as the alternative voting method for the 2022 municipal election being held on Monday, October the 24th, 2022, and that the CAO and clerk be authorized to execute any agreements necessary to implement internet telephone voting, and that council directs the clerk to prepare a bylaw to be brought forward to authorize alternate voting for the 2022 municipal election. I have a mover and seconder for that motion. Councillor Murray, thank you. And a seconder. Take my pick. Councillor Bink. Further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, we're going to have to do a vote here, a count here. Okay, just keep your hands up, please. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Is your hand up, Sherry, or down? Okay, 5 in favor. So that leaves 6 opposed, right? Okay, so that motion is lost.
Depending on how you
Oh,
vote,
sorry,
Walter.
I think, did I get 3 up there?
There was 3 on the screen, Walter.
Pardon?
There was 3 on the screen voting in favor.
Okay, just keep your hands up again. It's hard for me to see, especially if your hand is not very high. So just put your hands up once more, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that motion is carried then. What?
3 on the screen.
Yep. There's 3 here. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Moving ahead then. Shared fire services agreement extension. Jeff?
Thank you very much, Mayor McKenzie. The report was provided over the weekend. The salient background points are that we were asked earlier in the year to indicate our intentions to whether or not we would like to proceed with an extension of the agreement. Council passed a resolution indicating that we were intending to proceed with an extension. There was a part in the report that I wanted to make sure we report to Council that Mayor McKenzie and myself met with our counterparts in North Perth and in Perth East to talk about the potential for expanding or the appetite for expanding fire services given the announced retirement of the fire chief in North Perth. For a number of reasons and after a fairly robust discussion, North Perth indicated that they felt they would not be interested in entering into that, which cleared the path for us to go back and work with Perth East to work out the terms of the extension. The agreement is simply an extension, so it's a changing of dates, but most of the other terms, or all of the other terms essentially remain the same. There's a bit of clarification in the one schedule about the fire prevention officer timing, but otherwise it's the same agreement and it would be subject to cost of living adjustments as we move forward. My recommendation is that council approve the agreement, and we have a bylaw in the bylaw section of the agenda. The agreement starting on page 279, the bylaw being on 278, which would authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement.
Questions or comments with regards to that report? Okay, seeing none, the recommendation is that the municipality of West Perth receive the report titled Shared Fire Services Agreement Extension dated August the 16th, and that the council municipality of West Perth approve an extension of the Shared Fire Services Agreement with the Township of Perth East until December 31st, 2025. Have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Marshall, Councillor Rose. Further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. All right, brings us down to correspondence. There is a letter here from Safina with regards to ammonia safety. And I'll just read what the letters are. I won't go into it in detail unless you want an explanation. Then the 8.2 is a information or a letter from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks regarding an application for approval of waste disposal sites. And I'm not sure, Jeff, if you want to add anything to that one.
So I think we'll offer comments on each of the three items of correspondence. So if we do with 8.1 first, this is a standard approach that Safina is using for all of their plants. Councillor Marshall actually attended a focus group session and would have further comments to offer, I think, if any councillors had them, but this is Safina advising us that they're going to be offering this option to members of our community and talking about it in early September. So it's a heads up for council that this matter will be coming forward.
All right, and 8.2?
On application 8.2, we've received a, it's for an ECA, an environmental compliance approval for the operation of the former lagoon, and it also happens to be the lagoon that was formerly owned by Safina, although unrelated to correspondence in 8.1. And if there's any questions about that, we've done a circulation for it. I'd leave it. Dan is taking charge of the circulation, and we've had communications with the Ministry of Environment just determining our role. At this point in time, we've been asked by the ministry to provide technical comments from the municipality. So the technical comments will be will be identifying whether or not the proposal meets our official plan and zoning bylaw, in our opinion, and if we have any operational concerns. And we've got some questions to the ministry about public engagement and confirming public engagement, which we don't have to get council input on at this point in time, but I anticipate we'll come back on September the 7th with more, and I'll leave it to Dan if you want to ask more questions on that.
Okay, any questions with regards to that one?
I have a quick question for Dan. Could you find out what kind of sewage 311, 35, and 23E are for me? I assume it's all human, but I just want to know if it's any awful from like packing plants and whatnot. So if the three categories, I know we probably have zero say in this because the province will have the say, but could you direct me to a website where I could find those answers?
Sorry, it was 211.
In the categories, it's category 3, 11, category 3, 5, and category 2, 3E. And if you can just say, hey, on the Ministry of Something website, there you go, you can find it yourself. I'm good with that. As long as I can know what it is for September 7th.
We will make that available to you and the rest of council.
Okay, anything else? Okay, moving on, then the next one is 8.3, Investing in Canada Program, the Integrated Bilateral Agreement, Flexibilities under COVID-19 Resilience Stream.
Great. So the 8.3 is the correspondence we were hoping for as far as the COVID resiliency stream is the ISIP stream that we applied for the grant for $160,000 to support the administration building construction project. The correspondence, if you've had a chance to have a look at it, just indicates that all of the timelines will be extended by 2 years. So essentially what that means is that our project will be fundable and we won't have to ask for an amendment to the transfer payment agreement because the extensions will be automatic. And with that in mind, we brought the transfer payment agreement in the in tonight's council package. We have the transfer payment agreement for that $160,000 grant in the bylaws section of tonight's council package. So it's great news. It means we felt that we had no choice but to forge forward and assumed that we would get a reasonable response, and we got a very pragmatic and reasonable response that we can deal with. And I just want to point, and so that's money that we didn't have in that budget. So obviously it will support that budget and save us a bit of money, $160,000 in the project. And I want to mention that we also have the transfer payment agreement for the ISIP Recreation and Culture stream for the pavilion, the Ketterson Park Pavilion. That transfer payment agreement is also in tonight's council package in the bylaws. And we'll be asking you to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign that agreement as well, so we can forge forward with that project.
All right. Any questions on any of that? Okay. If not, moving on then, the recommendation is that the Council of Municipality of West Perth accepts the reports from staff and councillors as presented, and further that all committee minutes and correspondence not specifically dealt with by resolution be received and filed. Mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Rose and looking, Councillor Trankowski. Thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we do have a number of bylaws there. We actually have 8. Zoning bylaw 252 is a bylaw to amend number 100, 1998 for property lot 8, concession 16. Bylaw zoning bylaw 255, bylaw to amend again bylaw number 100, 1998 is amended in the Mitchell ward that we talked about previously. Bylaw 256 is a bylaw to amend again bylaw number 100 as amended for property described as lot 6, concession 4 in Fullerton. And bylaw 60 is to deem a part of a registered plan that we talked about earlier in the meeting. Bylaw 61 is a bylaw authorizing the execution of an encroachment agreement addendum between the Corporation of West Perth and a numbered company. Bylaw 62 is a bylaw authorizing the execution of a transfer payment agreement for investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, the ISIP, COVID Resilience Infrastructure Stream, local government intake between the Municipality of West Perth and Her Majesty the Queen in Right of Ontario. Bylaw 63 is a bylaw to authorize the execution of a transfer payment agreement for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ISIP, Community, Culture and Recreation Stream between the Municipality of West Perth and Her Majesty the Queen in Right of Ontario. And finally, bylaw 64 is a bylaw to authorize the execution of a fire administration services extension agreement between the Municipality of West Perth and the Township of Perth East. So I believe that we can do first, second, and third reading on all those bylaws. Do I have a mover and seconder on that? Councillor Marshall, Councillor Rose. Any further discussion on those bylaws? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Okay, announcements. Next regular meeting is September the 7th. And then there's a list of the following council meetings for September and the first part of October. Any notice of a motion? Wasn't aware of any. Any other business? Don't see any. We do have a closed session and a motion here that Council Municipality of West Perth proceeds to a closed session at 9:47 for the purpose of addressing a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. So I need a motion to go into closed session. Dan, sorry.
Sorry, Your Worship.
Did I miss something?
For a closed session tonight, no, you did not. Administrations. There's only be one matter for closed session tonight, and
Just
that's
the last.
the personal matters. Yep, so we can amend that closed
I wanted
session.
that when I was reading, because I didn't remember reading anything. So, okay. So just to restate that, it's just one item on closed session, personal matters about an identifiable individual. So mover and second to go into closed session. Councillor Tam, Councillor Murray, all those in favor? That is carried. So it takes us a minute or two to log off and go into closed session. We do have, there is coffee over there if anybody wants to grab a coffee while we're getting ready here. And I think, hey, we're back. So there's really nothing to report coming out of closed session. So we shall carry on. The next item that I have is a confirmatory bylaw. But before we get there, I do appreciate the cooperation of council members tonight. I know it's been a late night and a lot of stuff going on, but I do thank Dan and his team for doing work to set this up here tonight. And I guess having the courage to plan and implement this hybrid meeting. And there's a few little kinks. I know there's a couple things that I would like to see changed, and I don't know whether we can or not, but I'm sure there's a few little hiccups with anything new. But I think we all look forward to the time that we won't have a hybrid. Well, we'll always have a hybrid of some type, but I look forward to the time when we're all going to be in the same room anyways, and carry on from there. So next item then is a confirmatory bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council Corporation of the Municipality of West Perth, dated August the 16th. Mover and seconder for that. Councillor Rose, Councillor Harold, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. And finally, that the Council Municipality of West Perth adjourn the council meeting at 10:13 p.m. And a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Rose, Councillor Jankowski, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. There's tarts. Oh, there is.